Why a fed-up empath is more dangerous than the narcissist ever knew. There's a moment, an often invisible but earth-shifting moment, when an empath finally stops crying and starts seeing clearly. It's not loud. It doesn't come with dramatic goodbyes or shouting matches. There's no applause, no audience, no visible fireworks. But make no mistake, when an empath is fed up, the ground begins to tremble beneath the narcissist's feet. This is the moment they never saw coming. Because narcissists don't believe empaths are capable of reaching that point. They think your forgiveness is infinite, that your empathy isn't endless, while they can draw from forever. They mistake your compassion for weakness, your silence for submission, your loyalty for naivety. But every empath has a breaking point. And when that point is reached, when the scales tip and the clarity sets in, a fed-up empath becomes something far more powerful, far more awakened than the narcissist ever expected. And that's what we're diving into today. Why does the narcissist fear this shift, deep down, even if they don't know it? What psychological mechanisms are at play in both the empath and the narcissist? What makes a truly fed-up empath not just someone who walks away, but someone who becomes immune to the narcissist's most manipulative tactics? And how does this change the power dynamic forever? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, not only will you understand the silent but devastating transformation that occurs within a fed-up empath, you'll also understand why, from a psychological standpoint, the narcissist is never prepared for it, and why they never fully recover from it. Let's begin by understanding who the empath is in the narcissist-empath dynamic. An empath, at their core, is someone who deeply feels. They absorb emotion like a sponge, often so much that they confuse other people's emotional states with their own. This makes them intuitive, compassionate, and powerfully attuned to the unspoken needs of others. But it also makes them vulnerable, especially to someone who is emotionally manipulative. Enter the narcissist. From the outside, narcissists appear confident, charming, even magnetic. But inside, their emotional world is fragmented. Their self-worth depends on external validation, admiration, control, status. Because of this, they form relationships not for connection, but for control. They're not interested in bonding. They're interested in regulating their fragile sense of self through others. So when a narcissist meets an empath, they see opportunity. They see someone who will listen, care, forgive, overlook, and sacrifice. They see someone who will blame themselves when things go wrong. Someone who will work harder to fix the relationship even when they are not the one breaking it. This dynamic can continue for months, years, even decades. The empath gives, and the narcissist takes. And for a time, the empath believes they can love the narcissist into wholeness. That with enough compassion, enough patience, enough self-sacrifice, things will change. But they don't. In fact, the narcissist grows more entitled, more disrespectful, more manipulative. They begin to weaponize the empath's kindness, twisting it into a tool for control. They gaslight, making the empath question their own perception. They shift blame. They apologize only to manipulate. They punish with silence. They reward with crumbs of affection. All of this keeps the empath locked in a fog of confusion and hope. But slowly, painfully, the empath begins to change. 1. The awakening begins. It usually doesn't start with a grand revelation. It starts with exhaustion, with feeling drained every day, with noticing that no matter how much love is given, it's never enough. The empath starts to recognize patterns. The same arguments, the same insults, the same apologies, the same cycle. At first, they still try harder. But over time, they begin to pull back, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. And this is what the narcissist never anticipates. They don't expect the empath to wake up, to start questioning, to start observing instead of reacting, to stop defending themselves and start going silent, not the silence of submission, but the silence of reflection. Strategic silence. Detached silence. 2. The empath stops explaining. One of the most terrifying shifts for a narcissist is when the empath stops trying to explain themselves. That's when the narcissist loses control. Why? Because explanations fuel the narcissist's ego. As long as you're explaining, you're still emotionally invested, still reacting, still hoping to be understood, still inside the narcissist's game. But when an empath gets fed up, they realize that no explanation will ever be enough, that they're explaining to someone who doesn't want to understand. And so they stop. And in that stillness, the narcissist senses something has changed, but they can't quite name it. And that makes them panic. 3. The empath regains their identity. Before, the empath saw themselves through the narcissist's eyes. They internalized the blame. They questioned their worth. But now, they begin to rebuild from the inside out. They remember who they were before the gaslighting, before the manipulation. They start reconnecting with their own intuition, with friends and family they had distanced themselves from, with hobbies, passions, purpose. They begin to see the narcissist clearly, not as someone they failed to save, but as someone who was never willing to grow. This clarity is powerful. It's not rooted in revenge, it's rooted in reality. 4. The empath reclaims emotional boundaries. Empaths often have porous boundaries. They feel responsible for other people's feelings. But when they've had enough, something shifts. They begin to say no, not with anger, but with finality. They stop over-explaining. They stop accepting the narcissist's projected guilt. They stop walking on eggshells. And this is where the danger lies, for the narcissist. Because their entire strategy depends on the empath absorbing blame, guilt, and shame. But now, those tactics fall flat. The narcissist throws bait, and the empath simply doesn't bite. That's when the narcissist realizes they've lost access. Not just physical access, emotional access, energetic access. 5. The empath leaves without needing closure. For a narcissist, closure is a game. They drag it out to keep the empath hooked. One more conversation, one more explanation, one more apology. But a fed-up empath doesn't seek closure from the narcissist. They create it internally. They write their own ending. They leave not in rage, but in resolution. And this is terrifying for the narcissist. Because for the first time, the empath's focus is no longer on them. It's not even on getting even. It's on peace, healing, growth. The narcissist is no longer the center of the empath's world. They are a chapter closed, a lesson learned, a wound that is no longer bleeding. 6. The empath becomes a mirror. Here's the irony. In the beginning, the empath absorbed the narcissist's projections. But in the end, they become a mirror. By refusing to engage, to react, to explain, the empath forces the narcissist to face themselves. Their manipulations are reflected back as transparent. Their charm falls flat. Their power shrinks. And the narcissist, who has built their entire identity on controlling perception, now faces someone who sees through the mask and simply walks away. This, psychologically, is one of the greatest ego injuries a narcissist can experience. They are left not with an enemy to fight, but with themselves. 7. The narcissist begins to panic. The fed-up empath is no longer willing or available to continue performing the role the narcissist carefully crafted for them. They're no longer the emotional caretaker, the fixer, the one who absorbs blame or soothes every outburst. They no longer feel responsible for holding the relationship together, for proving their love, or for constantly justifying their pain in the hopes of being understood. That exhausting loop of rescuing, defending, and endlessly forgiving has come to an end. And the moment the narcissist senses this shift, their internal panic begins to rise. Because their control wasn't just about actions, it was about predictability. As long as the empath reacted in familiar ways, the narcissist could anticipate, manipulate, and dominate the emotional landscape. But now, that pattern is broken. So the narcissist scrambles. They lash out in anger, trying to reassert dominance. They launch smear campaigns, hoping to tarnish the empath's reputation and reclaim a sense of superiority. They might engage in hoovering, sudden apologies, dramatic gestures, desperate attempts to pull the empath back into their orbit. They may play the victim, painting themselves as wounded and misunderstood in an effort to evoke guilt. They might cry, beg, or erupt in explosive rage, unable to cope with the loss of control. But none of it works, because the empath, once emotionally entangled, is now grounded in truth. They've reached a level of clarity that strips away the illusions they once clung to. They no longer see the narcissist's behavior as confusing or heartbreaking. It's simply transparent. It's manipulation dressed as emotion. It's desperation disguised as affection. It's smoke and mirrors, nothing more. And so, the empath does not return. They don't argue, or explain, or try to correct the false narratives. They don't fall into the old patterns of trying to fix what they now know was never theirs to repair. They don't look back, because they no longer need to. And that's the most powerful move a fed-up empath can ever make, to completely and unequivocally remove themselves from the narcissist's illusion. To stop dancing to a rhythm that was never in tune with their soul. To step off the stage, leaving behind the role they never auditioned for, and reclaim the quiet, grounded freedom of their own truth. So why is a fed-up empath more dangerous than the narcissist ever imagined? Because when an empath reaches that breaking point, they don't just walk away. They shatter the entire illusion the narcissist has carefully constructed. They break the cycle, not out of bitterness or revenge, but from a place of undeniable clarity. They finally see things for what they are, without the filters of hope, guilt, or obligation. And that kind of clarity is unstoppable. It's not emotional, it's spiritual. It's not impulsive, it's transformative. They are dangerous to the narcissist's control because they still love deeply, but now they love wisely. And just as deeply as they once loved others, they now learn to love themselves. They begin to pour that same depth of care into their own healing. And that healing runs far deeper than the narcissist ever accounted for. Once their eyes have opened, truly opened, they never shut them again. Once they've seen the truth, they cannot unsee it, no matter how convincing the narcissist's next act may be. And when they finally reclaim their energy, when they take back the time, attention, and emotional space they gave so freely, it doesn't just return to them. It becomes sacred. It becomes protected. It becomes impenetrable to manipulation, shame, guilt, or coercion. The empath, once vulnerable, becomes sovereign. And this self-possession is something the narcissist cannot access, cannot imitate, and cannot destroy. But perhaps the most powerful part of this shift, the part the narcissist never anticipates, is that the empath does not become like them. They don't start mirroring cruelty or hatred. They don't seek to control, punish, or humiliate. They rise in a different way. They become unavailable, not because they're cold, but because they're clear. Not because they're angry, but because they're aligned. They simply become unreachable to manipulation. The narcissist can't guilt them, bait them, or emotionally entrap them anymore. The spell is broken. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Not to the empath, but to the illusion the narcissist depends on. The danger isn't in the empath's rage, it's in their resurrection. It's in their silent decision to no longer carry the weight that was never theirs. It's in their refusal to fight for love that was never freely given. It's in the way they choose peace over war, truth over denial, and healing over attachment. If you're an empath watching this right now, I want you to understand something on the deepest level possible. Your fed-up moment is not your breaking point. It is not the end of your story. It is your awakening. It is the moment your soul chooses life instead of emotional survival. It is your intuition finally getting loud enough for you to hear. The moment your heart stops begging for understanding and starts demanding self-respect. It's not too late. You're not too broken. And no, you are not overreacting. You no longer have to fight for your voice to be heard. You no longer need to explain your worth to someone who only saw it as something to use. You no longer have to shrink yourself to maintain the peace. You can let go of the need to be seen by someone who only saw what served them. You get to walk away with your dignity, with your truth, with your energy intact. You get to choose yourself, not in spite of your empathy, but because of it. You get to heal, not for revenge, but for freedom. You get to rise, not in anger, but in awareness, in liberation, in love for the person you're becoming, and for the narcissist who underestimated you, for the one who thought you'd never leave, never wake up, never stop giving. They didn't just lose access to your kindness. They lost the best supply they ever had. They lost the one person who truly cared, who saw their brokenness and still chose to believe in their potential. But more than that, they lost control. And control, to the narcissist, is everything. And when they lose that, when they realize you no longer respond to their tricks, their pleas, or their manipulation, what they feel isn't anger. It's fear. Because deep down, they know they've been seen. And nothing is more terrifying to a narcissist than being seen without the mask and rejected anyway. Thank you for watching and for showing up for your own healing. If what you heard here spoke to your spirit, please consider sharing this with someone else who might need this message. Subscribe to this channel for more reflections from the heart of a clinical psychologist, someone who understands both the pain and the power of your journey. And always remember, healing isn't just possible. It's already unfolding within you. You're not alone. You never were. And you never will be again. Stay strong, stay kind to yourself, and take good care.